who has been very evident in our community for his entire life and has been very much a giver to the community and has enjoyed doing it. And now can sit back and share experiences that will just curl your hair because he's done this for me before. And so I would like to say that there are many things about Jimmy's profession that can be said, and if I were to try to light into all of that, we might be here for a day or two, and we don't want to do that because we don't want it all to go to his head. But there are a few things that I want to make sure that he's credited for. He sat on the circuit court bench for 27 years in Madison and Clark counties and has dealt with every kind of criminal and individual that you would ever want to consider in your wildest dreaming. And I'm sure that in many times it was not a fun job, but he is managing now to look at the humor of all of it and to share it wisely with the rest of us. And that is truly a gift. Jimmy can also be credited for bringing the videotape process into the courtroom. And that's true not just for Madison County, but for our whole country. And he's done extensive traveling to go to courtrooms and to observe how this plays out in unique court situations. And it has been a real advance forward for the judicial system, and we thank him for that and appreciate his talents and his expertise in realizing that that was something that we needed to do to document our legal process. Jimmy has served in World War II. His family experienced some desperate tragedy on that. He had a brother who was a prisoner of war in Germany for 3 years. And that brother is now deceased. He did make it out of the prisoner of war camp, but again, a large, just a bucket full of stories that can come from that. And so I think that we're very honored today to have him come. I don't know what Jimmy's going to talk about, but whatever it is, it's going to be wonderful.
Talk about 20 minutes.
Yeah, you're going to talk about how many minutes you want. So with that said, the Honorable James S. Chenault. Thank you.
I think when you all invited me, what fools we mortals be. You get an old man up talking and you can't stop him. He'll just tell you more about it. If they say you ask him what time it is, he'll tell you how to make a watch. So you're running that risk with me. Well, the first thing I want to tell you about this is an antique club, and this was my great-great-great-grandfather's cane. He died in 1851, and they've got these little silver things around here, the genealogy of the family up till 2 generations ago. I've been for years saying I'm going to get another one and bring it up to date. But that's sort of interesting. That's the best antique in the house besides me. Today is June the 15th, and we went through great celebrations about D-Day, June the 6th. Well, today for me was D-Day. I was in the Navy. We invaded Saipan on June the 15th. That's an amazing invasion. We brought the troops, the ships, and everything roughly from Inawita, way over 1,000 miles to Saipan, and they invaded, and it's successful. The ship I was on escorted an ammunition ship in there, and we got there about 3:30 that day. And of course, I was wondering what would happen. I asked my division officer, what would happen if they sunk this damn ship we escorted? He said, you wouldn't have to worry about it. It'd take us too. But we got in there, and I very vividly remember they put on the ship speaker system a spotter, a plane spotter, to one of the ships out there that was shelling Saipan. We listened to that as we came in, sort of interesting. We about 50 yards to the right, and bingo, you got it. And that was the spotter thing. Well, so much for that. I at least explained that, but I bought somewhere or another United States silver, and on the back of it, USS Layman's and USS Topeka. I was on the Layman's, that's Destroyer Escort 743, and I was on the Topeka, light cruiser CL-67. It's sort of interesting on that, when I went in the Navy, I went in as apprentice seaman, and I actually went to sea as a seaman second class, which is the lowest you can go at sea. And I did get promoted to quartermaster third, and then I was sent back to the States, and I went through midshipman school, reserve midshipman school at Columbia University. And ultimately ended back up on the Topeka on the admiral staff. I served on 2 admiral staffs. And that was an interesting experience. The difference between, I don't want to offend anybody with this remarks, but I used to say it wasn't out of tune at that time. The difference between being an enlisted man on a destroyer escort and an ensign on an admiral staff, sort of the difference between being a white man and a colored man at that time. Now that's out of vogue and you can't say that. But, while I was there, we had segregated, there were blacks on the ship, but they were segregated. Harry Truman eliminated segregation in the armed forces. Matter just had to. We couldn't confront the world and have second-class citizens. So, not that that has anything to do with anything, but while I was on the Topeka as quartermaster, one of my jobs was to wind the clocks in each compartment. Must have been 10 or 12 of them. Little black clocks in Bakelite or something, white dial hands, and they were winding once a week. And I had what they call a chronometer watch take with me, and I'd try to set that clock, and if it was a little slow, touch it, get it up, if it was a little fast, touch it, get it back. Why, hell, a magician couldn't have made them run on time. You had to shift up and down and lock and humid and what, but every week I did that. Wallace Mackett called me up, oh hell, whenever someone in his office wanted to sell him this watch. It's a U.S. Navy chronometer watch. It's a Hamilton. They wind it up for 4 days, and it's very expensive thing. Well, of course, I bought that because that's what I walked around the ship with. So for memories, I bought that. I know that's fascinating information. And also on this date, I noticed in the paper today, King John signed the Magna Carta on this date in 12, what was it, 1215 or 1215, whatever it was. And the Magna Carta $12.15, so it's a year from now. It would be 800 years. That's the basic document for our democracy, the English, and of course we've got from England. So this is a very historic day, not only for me, but for all Americans. And my interest is eclectic. Heaven knows what I collect. But I had my friend Robert Earl Lanner came by, and well, I don't know when, probably 1975 or somewhere. He's visiting. He said, Jimmy said, I've got a Daniel Boone commemorative coin. Would you be interested in buying it? Well, I'd heard that they had them. I didn't know anything about it. Well, what do you want for it? Well, I want $100. Well, yeah, I'll just take it. is a 1936 Daniel Boone commemorative coin. In a few months, I happened to be in Lexington, and for the first time in my life, went in a coin store, Bluegrass Coins or something over there. And in the counter, I looked down all these coins. I said, "You wouldn't by chance have a Daniel Boone commemorative coin, would you?" "Yeah, I've got one." And they got another 1936 Daniel Boone commemorative coin. That was just $65, so I bought it. I thought it cut the average price down. And then I thought, you know, if they did this, I need no more about it. And I found out they made these commemorative coins in 1934. That was the 200th anniversary of Daniel Boone's birth. And they made them in 35, 36, 37, 38. I said, "Well, let's throw out coins. Now I can afford, I'm gonna try to get one of each one." So I set out, I thought how nice that was. But the 1935 coin didn't have on it the date 1934. So they issued 2 coins that year. So instead of 5 coins, that's 6 coins I had to get. Well, I said I'd get them, and pretty soon I found out, don't you know, they made those boogers in 3 minutes. They made them in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. So I set out, and I finally got the whole shebang is 16 coins. And in here, show you something about it real quick. This coin magazine tells you about the Daniel Boone coins and how many they made. And in 37, 38, out in San Francisco, and in Denver, they only made 2,000. And you think about that, if they made 2,000 coins and figure that out, that meant they made one for every 175,000 people in the United States. So they got to be rather scarce. And me finally getting the 1938 S, I like to never forgot that. I found some coin dealer up either in Vermont or New Hampshire. And he must have known I wanted it bad because it cost me almost $400. But anywho, I finally got the whole collection. Well, why would anybody want the coins of Boone? Because Boone is the founder of Boonesboro. Boonesboro is the pioneer settlement, really the real pioneer settlement in Kentucky. They acknowledged that for years to this George, whatever his name was, became head of the Historical Society. He was from Harrisburg. And he rewrote, said, "No, they're first by a few weeks old, Boonesboro." But Boonesboro has an interesting history. Many people don't know. Well, first off, they sold these coins with the Pioneer National Monument Association sponsor. And they sold them for $2 a hide. That means they made $2 a piece. They accumulated a couple $100,000. And ultimately, they gave that to the state to buy the property that's now Boonesboro State Park. Another interesting thing most people don't know, our local historian, Dr. J.T. Doris, was hot on, very active in the Pioneer National Monument Association. And we were trying to get Boonesboro to be a National Historic Park. We were competing against Cumberland Gap, and the government gave it to Cumberland Gap, so we didn't get it. Another thing, originally there was a big issue to try to make that. Boonesboro was before Kentucky became a state in 1792. It was in 1775. And they were trying to decide where to put the state capital. They had quite a delegation from Boonesboro, said this is where it ought to be. But like most things, Lexington wanted, Louisville wanted. Well, this is loggerhead, so they compromised and put it about halfway in between Frankfurt. But that's why it's not at Boonesboro. So much about Boone. He, on about June the 5th, he left Virginia or wherever and came into Kentucky 1769 for his first scouting around. What an interesting career he had. And these coins, which you all can look at, I'm not going to pass them around. I'm afraid somebody won't slip one out. But I made this setup, and there's an outfit in Massillon, Ohio that makes these. And not that this has anything to do with anything, but I sent what I wanted and they made exactly what I said. I never dreamed it'd come back like I asked them to. But it came back with a $300 bill. It didn't work. So I've got the coin, the years, and the mints. I've got in the middle here something called a Kentucky cent. That was put out in 1792 to 94. Why Kentucky cent? Because if you look at the prongs on it, there's a letter for each state in 15 prongs there. And the top one is K. So it became known as the Kentucky coin. So I got that. And you might guess that wasn't cheap either. You all wonder, was he that cheap talking Bill? I am. I also found, just luckily, a medal that Lexington put out in 1925 commemorating Lafayette's visit to Lexington and commemorating the sesquicentennial of Boonesboro. And it's on the back, they've got Daniel Boone, and on the front, they've got a picture of the fort and some other stuff there, which I thought fit in here very well. Then on my 80th birthday, I thought I better do something with this. So I've written up here so nobody have any confusion about what it is. It said complete set of Daniel Boone commemorative $5 and 3 medals of personal interest to the owners. This third thing that's a personal interest, my grandfather had some kind of business down in Rockcastle County, and I don't know whether they mining coal or what they were. Had a store down there. It's at Brushy Creek, and this has on it J.C. Chenault, Brushy Creek, Kentucky, and back here 50 cent good for 50 cents merchandise. It was a script. Well, I wrote on there, and then down here, just to be sure that when I died, this wasn't sold in a yard sale. I said, property of Judge James S. Chenault and James Howard Loeb. That's my grandma's home. Richmond, Kentucky, May 1, 2003. So much for that. Something else interesting about Daniel Boone. In the Revolutionary War, toward the end, General Washington was bringing his troops down to Yorktown, and General Rochambeau, the French, was also moving down there for the final siege in Yorktown. That lovely Benedict Arnold, the traitor, or strange, he was the hero of Saratoga, and why he defected it is difficult to know. He sent a letter by Major Andre, a British major, who became the courier with the letter that told how he would sell out. He sent the plans of West Point, how they'd surrender it, and where everything was so they could come easy. And 3, I just can imagine 3 sort of yahoo guardsmen or something, or stop Major Andrew. What's he doing here? And long story short, made him finally take his boots off. And there in the boot found this letter, which was addressed to General Clinton with his terms of becoming a traitor. Of course, they read it, didn't mean anything to them, but they took it to headquarters, and soon as Washington and staff read it, they realized, well, that damn Benedict Arnold is he's treasonous. They set out to catch him, he's already gone, but they had Major Andrew right in the hand. Well, Major Andrew was from New York City with the occupation there, and he was very popular among everybody. And everybody talked about what a nice fellow he was, and implored Washington to do some trading or let him go or something. Washington said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll swap him with you for Benedict Arnold. And they wouldn't do that. So he said, I'm going to give you the same treatment they gave Nathan Hale. They hanged him, which I thought was truthfully a sign of great honest leadership. Well, Arnold became a general in the British forces, and he was down in Virginia with about 2,000 men, sort of raiding around the country. I think he quartered Richmond, and Washington sent General Lafayette down there with some troops. Said, see, you can capture him. Instructions were sort of plain. Said, if you do capture him, hang him the first tree. Well, General Clinton in New York thought that the Washington's forces were going to attack New York. So he had got Arnold to send his men back to New York before Lafayette got down there. Then funny things happen again. With this, I assume a farmer, saw Colonel Tarleton, who was with Cornwallis, and he'd been a raider through the South and a terrible person, and he had about 60 troops with him. This fellow saw him and said, I know what he's up to. Got on his horse, rode all night long, 40 miles to Charlottesville to warn Thomas Jefferson, and to Monticello, and went to Charlottesville and warned the government. And they all got away. They weren't captured. But Tarleton did capture 7 people, and one of them was Daniel Boone. Well, he let him go the next day. But I think that just adds to the lore and the interest of Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone, when did he die? Anyway, in 18...
He died in 1820.
1820. Well, it was in 1845 then that they brought his body back and buried him. He and his wife buried him in Frankfurt, and they have a real nice shrine there. Now, what about Daniel Boone? I don't want to get into too much, but in Madison County, you're the most historic county in Kentucky, better. And in Kentucky, you know, there's only 3 national folk heroes. There's Davy Crockett, there's Kit Carson, and there's Daniel Boone. 2 of the 3 of them are sprang from Madison County for the national thing. I hope I'm not boring you sick. I could think of one time when I was city prosecutor, early on, I was going to change a lot of things. And we had this man up, Candy Darkapple. And I said, Judge, I've checked up here. Don't you know he's been in jail 43 times this last year? I said, I think something ought to be done about it. The judge looked at him and said, Candy, what do you say about that? He looked at him and said, well, Judge, you know, ain't none of us perfect. But, on Lafayette, got that coin, and then here's one, a commemorative coin that I bought on Lafayette, it was done in 1884, which is just a general interest if you're, I'm not a coin collector as such, but what catches my eye, I do. One thing that I don't have here, in June the 1st, 1992 was the 200th anniversary of Kentucky statehood. And I managed to order a flag that was flying at that time. Congress, well, first off, Vermont came a state in 1791 and Kentucky in 1792. In 1794, Congress said the flag will be changed from 13 stars and 13 stripes. We'll have it 15 stars and 15 stripes. And that flag continued till about 1818 when they came back and said it'd be 13 stars, 13 stripes and a star of each state. I think it's about 20 states then. And that flag I'm talking about was flying over Fort McHenry when the Star Spangled Banner was written.
I just got food.
Yes. Francis Key. I ordered a flag, I said, like that, and I had it in the courtroom on June 1st, 1992. I was proud to point out this is the Kentucky flag, 15 stars, that means Kentucky. After I retired, I gave that flag to Jamie, and we've been hunting it ever since. But I did buy something here. This. I bought a commemorative flag, which is that flag. It was put out in the United States Mint in 1740. So it went out. Well, it's got a date on it, down if I can see it. Here it is, 2012, when they put out this Star Spangled Banner flag, which I think is general interest. Well, I watered around here enough about that. Got one other thing I want to tell you about that I think is sort of fascinating. Louis Nunn died a few years ago, and at his estate sale they sold his personal effects. Among other things they sold was this picture here. My friend, buddy, John Sword was at the sale, and he bought this picture. It's a picture of Dwight David. Printed here, it says, for Mrs. Louis Nunn, with best wishes, is signed by Mamie Doward Eisenhower and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Well, John bought that, and I was really amazed about it. I said, I can't figure why a family would sell something like that. That doesn't seem reasonable that they sell the autograph thing from the president and his wife. Well, of course, Dwight David Eisenhower, way more than just a president. He led the troops when they invaded North Africa. And then he was made the Allied commander of the Allied forces that invaded Europe, where we talked about D-Day and so on, and carried them to victory. He's one of 5 generals that was honored by being promoted 5 stars. He served later as president of Columbia University, which is where I got my commission, the Navy. And he served as president of the United States for 2 terms. Well, I couldn't understand this. I talked to John about it every time I'd seen him, about what kind of people would let a family heirloom like that go. I reckon John got tired of hearing me, so he gave me this thing. And here it is. And as you might imagine, I proudly display it in my house. I got it right next to my grandfather clock, which is another one of Elder David Chenault, the owner of that cave. And on top of that, you all might find these of interest. Here is a ticket to the inaugural ball, 1953. And here is another ticket with the seed grade. You might pass those around. They're interesting to see. And they're part of it. They let that all go. I've saved so much family junk that I just can't understand doing that. And, well, it's a mystery to me why they would do anything like that. You in a sense demonstrated that you didn't have the best judgment in the world. Killed his sweetheart. I've got, just for general interest, a commemorative coin alike, showing him just as acting as a general. Got another commemorative coin here, where he's the 5-star general. And who knows what else I've got. All of them I've got. A while ago, I bought a commemorative coin of it in 1972, 71. So, I'm quite enamored about it. And that's what I thought I'd tell you today without further boring you. Anybody got any questions they think I can't answer?
I'd like to add to you Daniel Boone's story. I'd like to add a little something to your Daniel Boone story. In 1775, Daniel Boone headed towards Kentucky with 2 or 3 families, and down around Bean Station, Tennessee, his son got killed. Well, his son was in a rear party, and they didn't realize the next morning until this happened. Anyway, Daniel Boone turned around and went back to Moore's Fort, Castlewood, Virginia. Castlewood, Virginia was named for my grandpa, old Jacob Castle. So he knew Daniel Boone. In 1768, Jacob Castle and Daniel Boone were on the tax list in Rowan County, North Carolina. But anyway, Daniel Boone stayed 2 years at Moore's Fort and regrouped. This was in 1773. I think he came back in 1775 to Boonesboro. But when he left Moore's Fort in Russell County, Virginia, came to Boonesboro, he made the trip without an incident. The first time he came, his son.
I read where that they had one killed and they went back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you a little more about Beulah Nunn. I was president of the local bar association in 1955. And it was mainly a necrology group. Anytime some lawyer died, they wrote a beautiful encomium and sent it to his family and such. Put it in the official record. I thought, looks to me like we ought to do more than that. So I arranged to go to different places. We went down to Boonesboro. And I said, let's go out to Whitehall. What? I was wondering, of course, it's in pretty bad shape there. And I thought Kate Burnham was in charge of it. I remember I went down and talked to Mr. Burnham. No, he didn't have anything to do with it. Said, don't burn the damn place. Well, I went to my friend and longtime classmate, John Wilson Brandberg. I found out was farming. He said, well, yeah. Said, come up Clay Lane and come in that gate. That's the way to get there. So I arranged it, went to Turpin Funeral Home and got 40, I reckon, folding chairs. Went to Presbyterian Church and got however many folding tables you needed. We went out there and set it up. I forgot who catered it. But I had the good judgment to ask the editor of the paper to come too. And we went in there. It was in a pretty bad shape. I remember they had a tenant in the apartment in the bottom. And I looked in the refrigerator, just curious why they wasn't looking. I wonder what he had in there. And he had a package of hot dogs and a double cola, well, a big double cola, the only thing he had in there. But at any rate, Randall wrote up a real nice story about this out there. And the garden club women read it. And they asked me to come and speak to them at their next meeting. So I did. And they asked, they voted to make it their project to have that tape turned into a state shrine. And they also asked if I would incorporate them, which I did. And that's ultimately where it came about. When they finally had the dedication, I was the master of ceremonies. And the one I extolled was Beulah Nunn. She was the one that scattered around and acquired all the furniture that goes in there. She did a really wonderful job. And she also was the one that enough that said, you know, you got an old mansion. You couldn't let out a contract with the state to restore it. They'd have to protect themselves on everything in the world. It'd be astronomical. So what she did, she hired Tom Cornelison, a local contractor, who was a talented person, and he could match things and make them look good. He took this contract, fixed up this. He took this contract, fixed up that. So I don't know how many little contracts, but it was under the range of having to advertise and get bids and things. And Tom Cornelison's one did it. You go in there, there's a beautiful cherry staircase or a rail up. That rail was gone. It had been torn down and used to start campfires for students and people out there. He restored it. I guarantee it's as pretty as the original. But I knew that, and so when I was the master of ceremonies, Governor Nunn was principal speaker, but I figured he wouldn't say much about his wife. I did. I praised her very, very high. Then a few years later, I don't remember just what, say a few years later, 15 or 20 years later, they had another ceremony and dedicated it again. And I went out to it and listened to it. They never mentioned my name. And I thought of what Ronald Reagan said, it's amazing what you can get done if you let somebody else take the credit. So much for that. And that's why I was so interested in this. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, don't share my feeling about having the president Well, you remember Bob Moody talked to us about having presidential signature. Well, what about having one with dedicated to someone you knew? We have so much for that, that's enough.
Judge, I was there the day that, John Ford bought that fixture. I was at the sale, my wife and I were there.
I'm just curious, how much did he pay for it?
I can't remember, but I do know he bought a painting that day that he gave a considerable amount of money for. Considerable amount of money.
He told me how much he spent at that, but I don't think I'm at liberty to tell me what he spent at that sale, but I don't know how much he paid for this.
I was there and he bought a whole lot of stuff.
I've got a little story to tell about Judge Chenault, that somebody told me the other day. Some older fellow was telling me that, I guess the first year he was a judge, sat on the jury, and, it was either the prosecuting attorney or the defense attorney, one of them was talking. They said Judge Chenault was just turning around and feeding everything, he was opening drawers and doing this and doing that, it didn't seem like he was paying attention. He said, well, that judge, he won't be able to, he won't know anything. He said they came back in the next day, and the same attorney started arguing his case again, and the judge said, wait just a minute. He said, you said the same thing you're saying right now yesterday. And he attempted to summarize what the man said there, in about 30 seconds. And he said, I don't want to hear that again today at all. He need to give something new today in order for this courtroom to make a good decision. So their first opinion was, look at him, just fidgeting around. And then their last opinion was, he is really a good judge.
Well, one of the things, the credits I've got in 27 years, I listen to people argue about which way two cars bump together or something, but a no-nose tablet to sleep. But I never went to sleep. I've got one other coin I brought here, which I think is unique. It says on one side, do it. You flip it, and it says on the other side, the hell with it.